when medications are needed.
That's the calling of the pharmacist. We are that conduit of the drugs and the information to the patient.
Access is vital.
Most accessible healthcare professional in small towns.
The local pharmacy, a prominent feature on rural main streets, and access to care wherever you might live. Right now, pharmacists say it is a struggle for the survival of their business.
Meaningful change has to happen this year, or we're going to have a healthcare crisis just in pharmacy.
The source of this struggle, Sloan Freeman, president of the Kansas Pharmacists Association and a rural Kansas pharmacist, says are PBMs, the middleman negotiating what you pay for a drug between the drug maker, insurance, and pharmacy.
The vertical integration of PBMs is probably the biggest driver. They own the insurance company, and then they own the middleman, the part that negotiates the contracts with the pharmacies, and then they own their own pharmacy on top of it. And so they have all of the pieces.
Dan Davis has worked at El Dorado True Care Pharmacy since he was a teen, and for 16 years has worked here as a pharmacist. Dan says over the years, the PBMs have become more powerful, and they're leveraging their power over independent pharmacies. He says it's reached a breaking point, being reimbursed at or below what it costs for a drug.
When they're able to dictate the terms in such a significant way, we have no ability to fight back. We're handed take it or leave it contracts. And when you're dealing with single shops, our ability to negotiate there is non-existent.
Let me show you a couple of examples of what Dan is talking about at his pharmacy. The first receipt shows for this low-cost drug that the cost for the pharmacy was 18 cents. TrueCare was reimbursed 35 for a profit of 17 cents. The second shows a drug that cost TrueCare more than $1,400 was only reimbursed about $1,300. The pharmacy lost money, $120. Dan says this doesn't include the other costs, like dispensing and staff time. That average costs between $10.50 and $11.50 per prescription.
That doesn't include, every business's right to gain a little bit of profit to keep the doors open, to provide that stability for our employees and our community.
Dan says the low reimbursement is why they didn't continue a contract with one of the larger PBMs, meaning they will no longer accept certain insurance plans.
We've had to decide that, we were going to move on from a large segment of our patients so that we could keep our doors open, essentially.
Sloan says in 2024, 10 pharmacies closed in Kansas, both independent and chain. They were among thousands across the country.
Getting to a point where we can't afford to pay our pharmacists.
The association representing PBM says the work they do saves patients and payers an average of $1,000 a year, creating networks of more affordable pharmacies, getting rebates from drug manufacturers, and managing specialty meds. This industry has come under scrutiny by the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC's reports show that PBMs profit at the expense of patients and independent pharmacies with their ability to control drug access and prices. The top three account for 80% of drugs dispensed in 2023. In a second report, the FTC says that PBMs mark up cancer, HIV, and other specialty generic drugs, that the top three generated $7.3 billion through markups between 2017 and 2022. The FTC also says that they reimburse affiliated pharmacies at higher rates.
It's really tough to have to make those decisions of what insurances we're going to take in 2026 and if we're going to carry this drug.
It's creating so-called pharmacy deserts across the state. And in rural Kansas, when one closes, the next closest won't have the capacity to take all those patients on.
It's important for us to keep fighting for our patients every day, but at some point, we're going to have to fight for our own businesses too.
Shawn Loging, 12 News. The Wichita School District, and yes, for Wichita kids, puts it this way. The $450 million bond is a zero rate change. That means this bond will not change the tax rate that property owners pay based on the tax rate set by the 2008 bond. Vote No bond says, if passed, increasing property valuations will pay for this. Both sides are technically correct. This is the current mill levy in Wichita, 114.4 mills, where the property tax bill is divided between the state, county, city, and school district. The 7.511 mill rate for the 2008 bond accounts for about 6% of your property tax bill. This is how this 7.511 breaks down in terms of home values, based on the formula used in Kansas to calculate the property tax bill. For a $100,000 home, that bond tax rate turns into about $85. For a $200,000 home, the school bond portion is about $170. And for a $500,000 home, it's about $430 for the school bond. If the $450 million Wichita school bond passes, this rate will remain on your bill through at least 2045. If the new bond is voted down, it will be removed from your property tax bill when the 2008 bond is retired, which won't happen for a few more years. But here's the thing, while the tax rate for the bond will remain the same, home values tend to increase. Since the last bond was passed in 2008, home values have increased more than 70%, according to data collected by the St. Louis Federal Reserve. On average, the increase was 10% in 2023 and 24, and just announced 9% for 2025, according to the Sedgwick County Appraiser's Office. Hypothetically, let's play this out. For 2045, if home values increase 70% again. For that $100,000 home, if the value increased by some 70%, the value becomes $170,000. The bond tax rate of 7.511 becomes nearly $150 for that property tax bill. A $200,000 home increased 70% becomes $340,000, with the bond tax rate equating to nearly $300. And a $500,000 home becomes $850,000, with the bond tax rate equating to nearly $735. When you look at surrounding districts in the Wichita Metro, Wichita has the lowest bond mill levy rate, followed by Goddard and Hayesville. Andover has the highest with 27 mills. For fact finder Shawn Loging, 12 News. A more level playing field, that is how these newly enacted changes to the state's law are described by someone who works these cases. It comes after years of work trying to find a balance between law enforcement and people's rights. People like Jeremy Selhorn, who in May got a court order getting him his car back. He hadn't seen that car since a traffic stop in November of 2020. Currently sitting in an auto shop's lot, but it's his again.
It's a huge win. I've been listening to naysayers for years say, your car's gone.
Jeremy Selhorn says along the way,
and it's all attributed to, my partner, Erin. She did a lot of the work.
He was ready to give up on getting his '86 El Camino back.
I wanted to be the cool car dad for my son.
Jeremy was pulled over almost 4 years ago in McPherson County, arrested on charges of driving without a license and possession of meth.
They informed me that they were going to keep my car for asset forfeiture, and I was blown away. I knew what it was, but it was a very distant threat.
In the criminal case, he pleaded no contest to the possession charge, and the others were dismissed. He completed probation last year, and even then, still didn't have his car back. It wasn't until this spring a judge ordered the car returned.
Punishment should not outweigh the penalty of the crime you're charged with.
That was all before this week when a new law took effect, changing the state's civil asset seizure and forfeiture laws.
Deck was stacked against a great majority of Kansans. These forfeiture reforms are significant because it now definitely changes the way people can bring these cases, and it gives them the ability to fight back against the government.
Last year, state and local law enforcement departments seized more than $3.9 million in cash and property. What was forfeited totaled more than $2.3 million. Departments in half of Kansas counties reporting an incident. But when it comes to forfeiture cases, most go uncontested. Last year, nearly 70%.
It didn't make sense to pay an attorney $5,000 to get $3,000 cash back.
Under the new law, simple possession and use of drugs would no longer qualify for seizure and forfeiture. Law enforcement would have a shorter window to request forfeiture to just 14 days, and the bar to prove that case is significantly higher.
We think and we hope that the types of cases that would have been brought before these changes just aren't going to be brought now.
Changes Jeremy is welcoming.
That was pristine and spotless.
After the experience in getting his car back.
Batteries missing.
Although now it needs repairs before he can drive it again.
It's going to be like a victory lap.
Another change in the law, if people win more than half of their property back, the government will pay for their attorney fees. Historically, forfeiture has been used to fund police operations, equipment, prevention programs, and more.